Should Tennessee try to upgrade positions, even that are not positions of need in the transfer portal?
Well, the more and more we see in the changes surrounding college football, we see it drifting toward the NFL model in every way. Uh, so when I look at the NFL, when you look at teams in the NFL draft, not everybody, you can't always, particularly in the first round, you draft later in the first round, you can't necessarily fill a position of need. You got to say, can this guy really help us at this position of need? If not, you go for best player available. It's kind of a cliche. But I think in this era, you have to always look and you always compare and you say, here's my top running back. And a guy is available in transfer portal, and you look at him and do you think he's better? Then I try to get the guy that's better. Now, if there's a negative reaction to that, if that could have a negative impact, at least on maybe on team chemistry, on players already on the team, I just don't think in this era you can worry about that anymore. You have to get best players. And also, when I look at Tennessee's running back situation, Dylan Sampson certainly has tremendous potential. Maybe the younger guys do who haven't played as much too, Cam Selden, those kind of guys. But if I see an elite running back, I know we downgraded the position quite a bit, both at the NFL and college level. It seems to be all about the quarterbacks and even wide receivers more, but you get a really good running back, it can make a difference. So I'm always trying it. I would try at every position, even in a position, particularly too in the secondary. I mean, I know that's a position of need with Tennessee, but if you see a cornerback out there, an elite cornerback, and you've already got two good cornerbacks, but you say, well, this guy's better than both of them, then you try to get that guy. That to me is how you win a championship.
Here's where this could be a little concerning, because on principle, I agree with you. In the NFL model, you're right. You do that in the NFL, but you do have players locked in on contracts on the NFL. So what if you're Tennessee and you're looking for a new receiver in the portal, and word gets to Brew McCoy that you're looking for another receiver, and Brew McCoy says, they said I'm supposed to be the number one receiver, and they're going for somebody else. I'm out of here, and then he leaves, and then you don't land a receiver in the portal. Then you just lost one of your go-to receivers from this. Is it worth that risk?
Well, this is not something I would put on a billboard or disseminate on social media, that we need to get another receiver if I were Tennessee. I think, though, you've obviously got to be sure you can get him. That's a fine line there. But to me, if a player, just because a player hears, oh, Tennessee's looking at a Ohio State wide receiver, well, Brew McCoy's still making a lot of money, and he knows this system. It's not as though he's going to lose his starting position. He won't be the guy that you lose. If you're getting a Marvin Harrison Jr., you got a shot at him. Yeah, I would take that risk.
Yeah, it's the old don't go for need, go for best player. I mean, you've covered SEC sports a long time, so you probably remember, don't you, John, when Sam Bowie was taking over Michael Jordan, the Kentucky Ford, in the '84 draft. And
Yeah, I
Portland's
do.
thought was, well, we have a guard in Clyde Drexler, so we just need a big now.
I just think talent always wins the day. And if you can get a guy more talented. And in fact, we didn't know Michael Jordan would be what he became. We didn't really see that Michael Jordan. And I was covering the Final Four when he hit the game-winning shot against Georgetown. We saw a really good player, but we didn't think we were seeing maybe the best to ever play the game. And he became that. So, yeah, but I just do. I think in a lot of positions, I would look at that way, even in the offensive line. I mean, you've got veterans coming back, but if I see a guy that You got an all SEC lineman out there that wants to play in your system, and you can afford him with your NIL package. Maybe he's not making enough somewhere else. You got a lot of injuries in that O-line. Why not go for him? I don't know at this stage of the game, for example, an offensive lineman would say, "Well, I'm out of here. They got somebody that's even better than I am." They're not satisfied with me. I don't know that they're looking, and you know how it is in the offensive line. Players play different positions. You can move one guy to tackle, move to guard, maybe even a center, that kinda thing. So, yeah, I just think in the pursuit of championships, in this NIL era, you will have to take chances. Let's go back to the first portal opening with football. Evan Stewart, Texas A&M wide receiver. He enters the portal. Clearly a high-level talent. And we hear all these different schools are pursuing him. Why wouldn't Tennessee? Then I hear none of this is factually based. It's just what you hear. Oh, this guy might be kind of a head case. This guy might be difficult. All that kind of stuff, which often is because those rumors get started because teams know they can't get them and they have to answer why. I'm not saying whatever the case is, but there are plenty of great wide receivers who had, let's say, distinct personalities. And I imagined him in Tennessee's system. And I know there are guys faster than he is, but he's pretty fast. And he's one of those guys that can just make plays. And I envisioned him in Tennessee's system. So if I could have gotten that guy, if I had the NIL money to get him, I would have really gone all in on him. He goes out to Oregon. Even after Tennessee's offensive group seemed to be set, they're solid. But see, when you think about a championship and you think about those playoff games where the games are often determined by a great player making a great play. And oftentimes it's at quarterback. But we've seen it through the years at other positions too, at running back and receiver. If you can get a guy like that, I would be willing to take a chance.
Here's one way I think I'm going to cut into that thought, which is this. It's Michigan winning the national title this past year. I don't know if you're familiar with, they had an NIL campaign last year called Those Who Stay. And the whole focus was we're going to spend our NIL money to get everybody to come back and rely on it. I think they kind of resigned themselves to the idea that they'll never be able to get the talent that Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama can get. And Harbaugh and them resigned themselves to the idea that we can get close enough, but then outweigh them with experience and chemistry with the players that are still on their team. And honestly, John, I think that worked because that Alabama-Michigan game, I watched that game, and I'm sorry, Alabama had more talent all over the field. I think Michigan was just that much more disciplined than Alabama was because they played together for so long.
Yeah, that's a factor. And ideally, you want both. Sound pretty greedy, but ideally, you want both. But I still think in this era, doing what Michigan did and keeping players and sticking with them in that system, I think it's going to be very hard. It's going to be harder and harder to do that. I think Michigan is going to be the exception in that regard. I think Ohio State is the way to go. I think if you can get the very best players, I mean, it took Caleb Downs from Alabama, a defensive back. You do enough of that, to me, you eventually win, or you find a coach that can win those kind of games. So yeah, I just think those virtues will be harder to maintain in this era. I really do. But I give all the credit to Michigan. You're right. Well-oiled machine, a lot of good players, but they played together well. And you're so true. Didn't make the kind of mistakes that Alabama made.
Right. And it's funny you bring up Ohio State because I'm sure, as you've noticed, they are opening their checkbook to win it this year. And it feels like they're kind of saying, Ryan Day, you better win it for us this year or we're moving on. That's
We'll
that's
see,
what I'm getting.
and that's what we're going to have. I think throughout college football, if you have an NIL program that's championship worthy, then your coach better be championship worthy. Because if they see they're investing all this money and he can't deliver the championship, well, what's the point? Why am I spending all this money if he's not going to deliver a championship? We need to find someone who can. And I think certainly Ryan Day isn't on the hot seat, but he can't continue to fall short. Not against Ohio, not against Michigan, and not in the playoff. Because people, we look what his quarterback did as a rookie. And he came tantalizingly close, I know, to beating Georgia, but he didn't. And so people say, well, he couldn't win with Katie Stroud. I mean, how can we expect him to win? And so then that's when you make a change.